Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So, today what we're going to be doing for our brief little Christmas in July dealy is we are going to do some rice paper vintage coasters. Now, I looking at these are absolutely gorgeous. And I I don't know, like when I look at them, it reminds me of Christmases when I was a kid. Not that I'm as old as what these pictures are, but it's just stuff that I guess I would see in maybe my grandma's house or whatever, like when they decorated and stuff like that. So it just takes me back. So I think these are absolutely gorgeous. And if you've never worked with rice paper before, maybe this will help you out a little bit. It can be tricky because it's so thin and you don't want to kind of like lose your image, which you can if you're not careful on what you're backing it with. So what we're going to do is I've picked out 4 images that I really like, and I am just going to cut off all of the excess rice paper around the colors that I don't want on there and kind of just cut them down to size a little bit. And then because the background color of this is like an offish white, creamy, kind of with a tinge of yellow color, I don't have any mica powders that are that color. So we're going to do a little bit of mixing to kind of see if we can find something that will complement these. Now, if mixing colors with mica powder is a little bit more involved than mixing a paint color, in my opinion. So what I'm going to do is I just took a little bit of my Let's Resin and put it into one of these little disposable cups. I would rather try and get my coloring pretty much where I want it in here than wasting a whole 8-ounce cup of resin if it goes wrong. And I put a little bit of, it's both of these, all the colors that I'm using right now are Rolios. It's Mud Pie Brown and Gold Sand. And I'm just mixing those together. And then I'm going to take my HTV Ront White Mica Powder and add that to it because clearly I'm not going for this dark. Like, I would completely lose those images and that would be all bad. And that's not what I want to do. But I need to lighten it up. Now, this is where it kind of gets a little, weird, but we're just going to kind of keep playing with it, and we're going to add some more of this gold sand color to kind of get that creamy color, at least the base of the color that I'm going for. Now, what I'm going to do is once I'm kind of satisfied with the base undertones of this color, I'm going to add it to my big cup. And then instead of adding more white mica powder, because I feel like it gives it, I don't want to say it gives it a look that I don't want, but it gives it a look that I don't want. Like, it's just, I don't know. But we're going to go with some white pigment paste instead. So I've kind of got the main undertones that I'm looking for. Now, it looks dark in this cup, and that's fine because we're diluting it down, mixing it in all this other resin, right? So it'll be okay. It's going to lighten it up. And like I said, we're going to take some Ocean White by Let's Resin and we're going to add a little bit in here to get that kind of creamy base that we're going for. I also don't want to use more mica powder in the white because I don't want it any more shimmery. I don't necessarily want it flat, but when you kind of combine like your mica powders with that shimmery, sparkly kind of look and pigment paste, you kind of get almost like a satin finish as opposed to a super sparkly or that flat color that you're going to get with just pigment paste. So that's kind of what I'm going for. Now I'm just kind of matching it up and making sure that it looks okay. It's not too dark and I shouldn't lose my pictures in there, hopefully, when I put the rice paper on. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill these guys up a little bit less than halfway. I want a nice coating on the bottom so that you can't see through it, but I don't want too much in it because I do want to add some stuff into here after this layer is cured. Now, I am not adding these rice papers on yet. We need to seal them and protect them first. And what I did off camera was because I don't know if I've ever worked with rice paper, maybe once, and it's been a while ago if it was. Um I I experimented a little bit on how to seal it, because when you get paper wet, it can turn a different color or whatever. So on those pieces that I cut off, I took some of my gloss varnish and I applied that to one little piece, and then I took some Mod Podge, and I'm just using the dishwasher safe one just because it's easiest for me to get to right now. And I let them dry and kind of looked at the two. Now, in my opinion, the Mod Podge looked a lot better, so that's the one I'm going for. Now, I am being careful. This paper is very delicate to work with, so I am being super careful. Apparently, so is my paintbrush. Um, I'm being super careful that I'm not being really hard when I'm applying this to them. Typically, I would do front and back, but you can already see that it's going straight through to the other side because of the thinness of this. So I don't feel that I need to do that. Now, I will go over with a second coat, and I am making sure that I am hitting all of the edges where I cut as well, just to make sure that everything is sealed really, really well, and I don't have that issue with resin kind of leaking and getting sucked into it when I do the next step. So we're going to let that dry. I did the second coat off camera. Now these are all dried up. Resin's cured. Now it's time to go on to the next step. So recently I got gilding glue, and I had tried to see if I could use the gilding glue and kind of put some stencil work on there with that. It didn't work. It's too runny. So I got some of that tack it over and over glue, and I am just I put a little bit in the cup, and with a dotting tool, I'm just kind of going along whatever with the stencils that I picked out, and I'm just kind of putting it in there. It's a thicker consistency, so I don't have to worry about it sliding up underneath that stencil unless, I put too much on or I move the stencil or whatever. And as long as I can pull that stencil up straight and not move it, it'll be fine. Cleaning up any kind of edges that I may need to touch up with a micro brush or Q-tip or whatever. After it's dry, I will go over this with some glue. I mean, it's glue. No, I'm not going to go over it with glue. I don't mind me. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm going to go over with some alcohol because I want to make sure that I don't have, when I apply my foil to it, I don't have any foil sticking in areas that I don't want it to. So I'm just going to get off any kind of stickiness that may be there from either me trying that gilding glue earlier or maybe getting some of this tack it over glue on there, not meaning to and not seeing it because, it does dry fairly clear. So I just don't want any issues. Now, this part did take me a hot minute to do. One, trying to figure out what to use and how to make it work. And two, because as you can clearly see, my stencil is way, way, way too big for the actual, coasters themselves. And I don't want to cut it up necessarily and just kind of like destroy the whole image by doing that. Like, it's not what I want to do, so I'm trying to make it work, and it's, kind of a thicker plastic, so it doesn't want to bend very easily, so it's just, it's a pain. But I think in the end, it turns out pretty cool. Now, the one thing that I can say is, after looking at it, depending on the look that you're going through, like I used the dotting tool to apply this glue, right? And I am applying it semi-thick. Once I brushed the foils over it, the glue as it dried and whatever it dried, especially like on the Christmas trees, it dried in lines, if that makes sense. Like from how I was pulling the dotting tool. So it's not just what you would get if, say, you used a paintbrush or something like that and you just were able to do it in one nice swoop and whatever. So now in the actual finished piece, you can see the lines underneath the foil. I mean, honestly, for this, I think it gives it a cool effect and it works with it. But depending on what it is that you're trying to do and what look you're going for, that may not be the way that you want to go. You may want to try and use, like a paintbrush or something like that, smaller. Or, I know they have some kind of spray that you can use to stick your stencils down so that you don't have to worry about it going up and under. Now the snowflakes I had the hardest time with, and I think it's just because of the shape, and it just, they were a pain. They were a royal pain. I ended up getting there in the end, but I did have to kind of touch them up, like get the basic-ish shape down while the stencil was on there, and then touch it up after I pulled the stencil off. But yeah, that part was not fun. And then we're just gonna do these bells, and I think that's it. That's all of them done after this. I'm going to let it dry, I think, for probably about 30 minutes, because I did apply it kind of thick, and you can see the snowflakes and the bell that I did, they're still not completely dry even 30 minutes later, but it'll be fine. So now I'm just taking my colored foil and a paintbrush, and I'm just kind of trying to place it where I need it without like getting foil everywhere. I've never done this before. This is a first, so I'm not sure if it's gonna work or if I'm just gonna have a big huge mess. Like, I really don't know. I don't. So we'll see. So putting it on with the brush, this is a soft brush, and you can see it kind of like, you can kind of see the outlines of the trees right now, but the foil didn't really want to come off of the resin either. So then I had to get one of those harder, kind of like a dry brush, and like, you can see it's shaking my camera, and I apologize for that, trying to get it to come off. And I found out that in the end, tape is what worked best. And, I just apply the tape. And now there may be spots that it took it off of where the glue wasn't the greatest, but for the most part, it cleaned it off really, really well. And I didn't have any issues with it. So yeah, this was the way to go with that. And I'm really happy. I think it looks pretty cool. And then we're gonna, after I'm done cleaning all this off and, kind of getting the rest of the other two on, we are going to place these rice papers in here and finish these babies up. Now, the reason that I would have cut out the shaking of the camera, but I really kind of just wanted you guys to see how easy it was for the foil to come off with the tape, as opposed to, you know, trying to get it to come off with a brush or any other method. Like, it really was pretty easy. I'm just going around where that's kind of stuck to the actual mold itself to make sure that I don't have any foil there that where I don't want it. All right, so now I let the other glue dry a little bit longer, and we're coming back. Now we're going to do the bells, and I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to kind of burnish it on with the brush, and then we're just going to tape it off, because why not? Like, it's clearly the easier, best method to do this, so that's what I'm going to do. And I am rubbing, on the harder side, just to make sure that all that foil does get in there and it looks really, really nice. And then that's it. Do these snowflakes up, and we are done with this part. And we're going to move on to getting the rice papers on. Now, with the rice papers, the reason why you want to make sure that they are sealed very, very well, and that when you choose your background color, is because they are pretty see-through, very, very thin, very, very fragile, but they are super, super gorgeous and can add so much to your piece if it's done properly. So when you're kind of working with it, you want to pick a background that you're not going to lose the image in, because you can pretty much imagine that even though it's sealed, we're probably going to see the background through it somewhat, right? Like, that chance is high probability. So you want to kind of make your background either very light, or like I did, I kind of, I mean, I definitely went light, but I kind of picked a color that is very, very close to what I've already got. Now, as opposed to just laying this into the resin and then going, I am going to Mod Podge these babies down. So I am putting some underneath, and then I'm going to spread it all over the top again. It's going to give it another coat of Mod Podge, so, another layer of protection on there. And then I'm not going to have to worry about any bubbles or anything like that creeping up underneath of there, because they're going to be glued down all the way around, making sure I hit all of those edges. Now, you don't need to put on a super thick coat. In fact, I would recommend against that, because even though these are sealed right now and they're still fragile, you don't want to brush too hard. You don't want too much on there because you can tear them. They can rip if you're going at it too much. So I am trying to make sure that I can get rid of as many brush strokes as possible. And then we're going to let these dry for a little while, a good half hour. It's not really going to take that long for the Mod Podge to dry, but I just don't want to have any issues with any kind of wetness in there and having issues with my resin curing later on. But as this is going to dry anyway, there's some more stuff that we're going to do to these to kind of give them a little bit more something something to make them stand out and, get rid of some of those kind of blank, dull areas that are on these coasters. I think this one right here with the Christmas tree is my favorite. I really like how they came out. I like the lines that the glue left. It gave them more kind of depth and dimension to it and just more character, and it fits really well with this image. And I don't know, I really really like this one a lot, like a lot. And just the way it looks, kind of how it's not perfect, kind of, I don't know, makes it feel older. So I've got these little, I don't know if they're supposed to be holly berries or whatever kind of Christmas sparkly berry things. And they're just like little foam berries that are on here. And we're just going to place a couple of these in each piece. Now, when you do something like this, and this is why I try not to fill up the mold very high. Now, these are like super chunky coaster molds. And I don't want to, I want to make sure that when I'm putting them in, they're not too big and they don't stand up too much that they're going over the top of the mold and I'm going to have an issue with covering it with the clear resin when I'm done. So we're going to do a couple of things to kind of avoid that. One is pick our pieces accordingly, making sure that nothing is too big. Like these super big berries, I'm not going to really be able to use. I'm going to have to use some of the smaller ones on there. And then because the little branches and stuff are, they've got some movement to them. I'm going to get some of my Light Wish UV resin and I'm just going to kind of put them in there and kind of the high parts, I'm going to glue them down so that they're not sticking up and over my mold. And then it's also going to help for when I pour my clear resin in. I don't have to worry about them moving. Now, the one thing that I will have to pay attention to is the fact that it's not flush up against that bottom layer. So there is like holes and stuff in there that I'm going to have to make sure when I put my resin in that it's getting up underneath of there completely and not, you know, gonna give me huge air bubbles or anything like that. The only other thing that could be a possibility, and I'm not 100% sure, is that these, like I said, they are like foam berries, and I don't know if they're going to release any air bubbles. So that could be a possible problem as well, but we're just gonna have to wait and find out. Like, I didn't necessarily want to cover the entirety of them with UV resin. I guess I could have, but it's not what I wanted to do, so I didn't do it. Okay, so they're all done. Resin's mixed up. Adding a little bit of the Rolio Pearl White for that super sparkle, and that's just to kind of give them, some sparkliness in there. And we're just gonna go for it. So I do want to make sure that I am going to like pour a little bit in there. I'm gonna work around in where all those berries are placed and make sure that the resin flows up underneath there and all of that good stuff, just to make sure that I don't have any issues and get it around, the entirety of the coaster. Then we're going to fill them up the rest of the way and let these babies cure and keep our fingers crossed that nothing stupid happens, because I don't want to have to do something else or fix them or, any of that dumb stuff. I don't want to do it. So that's pretty much it. Now it was a pain kind of getting the resin to go up underneath those branches. Um, I was worried that, I would do it too much, too hard, or too fast, or whatever, and kind of knock them loose. And I definitely didn't want to do that. So I am kind of being semi careful about it. And then I'm going to make sure that I go all the way around the coaster to make sure that there's no bubbles trapped there. All right, so we're going to finish filling these up. Make sure that they are at the tippy top of the mold, because I need to make sure that these berries are completely covered. And I do have a hard time sometimes seeing if they are, just because of the way that it looks and the position that I'm in. And hit it really, really well with the heat gun just to pop any bubbles that I may have caused. Okay, so 24 hours later, I should have been done. I don't know what happened, if they were setting on something or whatever that made them uneven, but they are uneven. At least three of them are. So I must have had some kind of, I don't know, maybe dried resin or something on my curing area, and it was sitting up on there, because yeah, they're not level, and I don't understand why. They should be. So now we've got to fix them. So I did mix up a little bit of resin. I popped some popsicle sticks up underneath the side that I thought where the issue was, and I'm just taking my little mini spirit level and making sure that they are in fact level. And we're just gonna add a tiny, tiny bit of resin to these, and hopefully, because they are at the, like, damn near the top of the mold. Like, they don't need that much more. So hopefully we don't have an issue with any kind of overspill and all that stuff. So I am just kind of using a little bit, hitting it with the heat gun to pop bubbles and kind of thin it out and make it more, easy to move it around. And then I'm going to take my dotting tool and I'm going to start going all around the edges. Now, I am taking it all the way across. So even though it's not level and I've got one side higher than the other, I still need to make some of it go to the other side as well, because if not, then I'm going to have a line and that's going to look dumb. So what should happen, for those of you who are fairly new to resin, is that because I have it propped up with a popsicle stick, even though I'm putting it up on the part that's higher, yes, it's going to make that a little bit higher, but at the same time, the resin will self-level, so there'll be more in the areas where it was lower, so that it will come out level, if that makes sense. So it's a process, but you do need to take it all the way around to make the entirety of it level. Otherwise, you will have a line that you can see where you added more resin, and it's just gonna be stupid looking and probably won't be level anyway if you don't do it this way. I mean, I'm not saying that there's not other ways to do it. Obviously, I'm sure there are, but I was talking in terms of like putting an entire coat of resin over the whole thing. Anyway, okay, so another 24 hours later, and here we are. It's finally done. Now, of course, this is the one that I did not do, I believe, and it, I don't know what I'm doing, but look how pretty. I think it turned out really, really nice. Now, I did get overspill. I guess I went too far. I know there were some areas I had to clean up. So now we're going to have to get rid of those. And of course, it's super thick in those areas too. So that's going to be fun to get off. But I love the look. Like, love, love, love them. They are so pretty. I really like the kind of vintagey kind of feel, nostalgia that I get from looking at them. It just takes me back to my childhood and my grandparents' house and all of that stuff. Like, I don't know. I think they're really pretty. I had played around with the idea of, instead of coasters, making them into some kind of wall hanging something or another, but changed my mind on that. I just like the coasters. Now, you could edge them off if you want to, but I kind of like the kind of, I don't want to say simple, but just kind of, I don't know, the look. I like them. I like them a lot. But anyway, that's pretty much a wrap on this one. I'm just going to clean up these edges, and then that's it. The final pictures will be here in a second. So that's a wrap on this one, guys. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. I will see you guys on Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time for the premiere of the collab that I'm doing with Mini Scenes and all of them. Hope to see you guys there. And yeah. Love ya. Bye.
Gingerbread and laughter at the door, wishing we could live it once more. Carols singing, twinkling trees so high, stockings hung where dreams could touch the sky. Candy canes and windows frosted white, holding on to magic tight. Christmas past, oh take me there, to a time with no compare. Every heart was alive and free in those warm, sweet memories. Open gifts at break of dawn, all the worries come undone. Simple joys and winter's charm, wrapped inside a loved one's arms. Family gathered round the fire, tales alive within the